Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Market Beat Monday, where we are going over some of the biggest moves of last week and getting you started out on the right foot for the rest of this week moving forward. A lot of earnings to cover, but we need to start with this new record high for the S&P 500. Here to break down some of the market moves and the names that you are interested in this week are Market Beat analysts Thomas Hughes and Chris Markoch. Guys, we're so thankful for your time on these Market Beat Monday lives. If you've never been here before, we're glad that you're here as a first-time guest, so you know what to expect today, where you can write in the chat whatever stocks you're interested in. We're going to talk for the first 10 minutes or so about some stocks we've prepared about, some of the big market movers happening, some economic catalysts to keep in mind this week that could move the market again later on as the week goes on. But then we're going to get to your stocks, the companies that matter most to you. So put those in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can, and we have a lot of names to cover already this week. So Chris and Thomas, let's move into that new record-breaking high for the S&P 500. What's going on this Monday?
Well, yeah, the market started off on a solid foot this morning at last week's high, moved incrementally higher during the day. We didn't really have a big movement, but it is a positive movement. It shows some hope ahead of earnings season. Earnings season really started last week, but this week is when it starts to gear up. We'll have over 100 reports from S&P 500 companies this week. There'll be close to 200 next week. So it really was a good sign, a sign of hope in the market that earnings season is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, the market's continuing the rally from last week. We were talking before we started here. It looks like gold's starting to participate a little bit, which is a little bit of a contradictory signal to the rest of the market. But I think that's just I think a question of what flavor do you like right now. And of course, crypto's continuing to rally after the big crypto week and the legislation that at least passed through the House last week. So we'll see if that momentum continues.
Yeah, I think the crypto story is interesting because we're hearing a lot more about Ethereum and not just Bitcoin. That's starting to become a really popular name out there too. Last week we talked a lot about mining stocks kind of rising as all of these cryptocurrencies are also rising. So those are some really popular names out there. I'm interested to see if some of our viewers want to hear about those kinds of stocks. Let's talk about going over earnings from last week. I'm just going to cover the basics, and that's some of the big banks. Let's start with JP Morgan. How did they report?
They reported generally well. The report was better than expected on the top and the bottom line. They had some unexpected strengths. Of course, NII was still strong. They gave positive guidance also based on NII, or net investment income, because of the interest rate environment. With last week's CPI report, we're not expecting to see interest rates fall significantly within the next couple of quarters. So JPM's earnings and margin will stay pretty strong. Was definitely a good sign for the market. The stock price pulled back a little bit, but it's already rebounding off the moving average. So the uptrend is intact. Momentum looks pretty good. So as long as the rest of the season unfolds pretty well, there's no surprises in the economic data, I would expect to see JP Morgan continue to trend higher.
Yeah, Chris, any other thoughts on some of the big banks this week, not just JP Morgan, but anything last week and what does it say towards kind of overall market trends and what's going on in the economy right now?
Well, I think the biggest news that's coming out from last week is that there were no big surprises. I mean, the banks did what the banks were really supposed to do. You didn't see any negative surprises. And to the other point, you didn't see any that you would say were necessarily blowout earnings either. It was people expected the banks to do well, and they did. And I think this week we'll continue with some of the regional names, and I suspect that they'll do well. Again, the banks have kind of figured out the high interest rate environment. They figured out how to navigate it. They're doing well. And as Thomas said, the Fed's not likely to do anything here when they meet next week. So that kicks it down to September before you're likely to look at lower interest rates. And even there, that's not going to be a significant move down that would affect the banks at all.
Right. Just looking at the outlook for the Fed, last week's data didn't really move the needle any. We got about a 100% chance for a single 25 basis point cut by the year's end, and about a 60% chance for two, which isn't very much. If we see inflation continue to run hot the way it is, I would see that rate fall to just being about one cut by year's end, and maybe there'll be some more early next year.
Good. And last one to cover from last week, and that's just Tesla. Chris, if you can go over Tesla a little bit, what happened with that stock?
I think, no, Bridget, I think we were going to talk Pepsi.
Pepsi, sorry, that's the one we were going to cover. Yes.
Tesla this week.
Yes.
Yeah. So Pepsi was, it's the better than feared results, right? The stock had been bottoming out after its last quarter's results, but the company came in with a solid earnings report, again, better than feared, showing that there is some still demand strength there. Market liked what it saw.
Yeah, I think with Pepsi, a lot of this action is because of the historical value and yield. There were certainly some headwinds for this stock over the last 2 years, or reasons why it sold off, but it sold off to extreme low levels. It's paying an extremely high yield. I think it was over 5%. Let me check that, which is really ridiculously high, really good for this company.
Right.
It's a yield that, it was over 4% last week. Yeah, so it's a yield that dividend investors are going to want to buy at this price for the value, for the payout, for the reliability, for the expectations of distribution growth. So with this bottom in play and the company producing growth unexpectedly, I would expect to see PepsiCo enter this long-term cyclical uptrend. There'll be ups and downs, but we're moving now from the low end of the value range to the high end. It might be 5 or 10 years for this to happen, but investors, I would think, would see a pretty fair gain in that amount of time if they bought Pepsi now.
Yeah, I think that's what's the interesting story about Pepsi is that we've been talking about it on the last month or so of it just being so low, and whether it was a buy, a really great generational buying opportunity. That was what some of our analysts were saying. So good to see that this was better than expected for this report. Now, before we get into some of the names that are coming out, there's a lot of names coming in the chat. I love to see this. Thank you, everyone, for adding those stock suggestions in there. But before we get to those, I just want to cover a couple of the big names coming up for earnings this week and what investors can expect. So let's get to some of those names coming this week, guys. Which is one of the first big companies this week?
Well, I think tomorrow the first name on my list is Verizon. And it's not going to be an exciting report, but it should show sustained growth. It should show some additional margin improvement, bring some more safety into the picture for its capital return, which is substantial. Verizon is a high yield, low value stock, easy to buy, easy to own. And the long-term outlook is really good with this one because of the rise of 5G and with AI. The IoT is supposed to start picking up momentum like this year and next year as AI and these networks start to be built out. And Verizon is well positioned for that. All of the carriers are well positioned for that. And so looking for good results and possibly sparking the next leg of the uptrend that this stock started last year, the year before last.
Good. Chris, any companies that you're watching this week specifically?
One of the ones I'm going to be intrigued to hear about is Google, Alphabet Inc., I should say. They report on Wednesday. They won't report till after the market closes. This has been a stock it was probably one of the most beaten down of all the Mag 7, except maybe for Tesla. And, people were kind of predicting that AI was going to put an end to their search business. And I think that narrative's starting to level out a little bit. And I'm just going to be curious to hear what happens with the company. The stock's been rallying heading into earnings, so it seems like people are expecting the company to do well. But I think that's going to be one of the tech names that people are cautiously optimistic. They want this to be a good print for Google, for Alphabet, to see that the search business is still very solid. They want to hear about the autonomous driving and how Waymo's doing in regard to that business. So there's a lot. As with a lot of the big tech earnings, there's a lot riding on it, and people just want it to be a good print.
Yeah, very good. Well, I know this name, I'm going to start getting to the chat now of some of the names that are popping up. This name won't be reporting earnings for a while. They kind of wrap up earnings season. But Richard from Wales, UK, thanks so much for being here, Richard. He wants to know about NVIDIA and whether you guys think that this company can continue to keep going even as it continues to hit new highs. I know, Thomas, you like to talk about NVIDIA too. Share your thoughts again really quick on how far you think NVIDIA can go. Can it keep going higher from where it's at today?
I think it can. I think that based on the deal momentum, this new development where they're able to sell back in China again, has got the company set up for some really serious long-term gains. The revenue outlook right now is fantastic. We're going to sustain a high double-digit growth pace for the next 5 to 10 years based on all of these AI spending trends. That puts the valuation for NVIDIA down in the 12 range by 2035, which is about a 65 or 70% discount to where it normally trades. So we're looking at potential for 100%, 200% stock price gains for long-term holders. In between now and then will be some short-term gains that people can trade on. I think right now the stock is heading up to about the 210 level, and we could probably be there before the end of the year.
Yeah, it's been really great to see how much the stock has continued to rise from where it fell to earlier this year. So we love to see that NVIDIA growth story. A lot of investors have that stock, obviously. Going to continue along this trek with some of the questions that we have coming in from the chat. eHelp wants to hear about SMCI. I know it's kind of similar range. SMCI has had an interesting year or two with some of those accounting issues and things like that. Where does this stock stand today?
I think SMCI is in good position today. I think it's gotten past its bad news, gotten past those hurdles. The market is able to turn and look towards the actual business, which is booming. Based on the trends with NVIDIA and with AMD, I would expect this upcoming earnings report to be really spectacular, come with some pretty solid guidance, and really get this market reinvigorated. Over the last, say, call it 3 to 4 quarters, the stock has put in a bottom. Right now, it looks like it's in a reversal. We're heading up to the critical resistance point right now. That's probably going to be around the 57.50 to maybe the 60 level. And we may get above that soon. We get above that level pretty soon. This market could extend the rally for the rest of the year, probably get up to the $100 level pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think there's one question here about AMD too. We didn't want to wrap up that kind of chip stock discussion talking about AMD as well. Chris, any of your thoughts on AMD? We hear from Thomas a lot about NVIDIA versus AMD. What are your thoughts on where AMD is headed so far this summer?
Well, AMD, right? AMD is the catch-up trade to NVIDIA, and I think that we've been seeing now in the last, especially in the last month, AMD is starting to catch up there. The chart looks really strong. It's now starting to get close to that $170 level, which if it can push past that, that would be psychologically important for investors. AMD is the stock that I kind of have felt like it's the sleeper stock here. I think a lot of people were counting it out, but I think as this chip market and as the AI build out is becoming more mature, you definitely have companies that are looking for alternatives to NVIDIA. You'll have investors that are looking at alternatives to NVIDIA stock. AMD fits both of those niches very well.
Yeah, really good discussion there. I want to move on to some other ones that we're looking at. There's lots of different names coming in for today. Let's talk ASTS. Thomas, you can look up ASTS really quick, and we can talk about that. And then Chris, I'm going to have you looking at some drone stocks. We had a really interesting drone video published on the channel just yesterday. If you missed that, go back and watch Sunday's video. We had the CEO of Dragonfly on for a second time, Dragonfly Drones, and that's a really interesting company. The stock had doubled last week and then dropped a little bit Friday, but it's still doing really well. And there's a lot of interest in these smaller drone companies. So a lot of the names that we have coming in, RCAT is one of them that they want to know about. I know there's a couple of drone stocks that you guys wanted to talk about too. So Chris, if you want to start with one of those drone stocks that you were looking at talking about as well.
Well, sure. Bridget, we had talked before we came on, and somebody in the chat was asking about ONDS. And this is a tiny company based out of Boston. It's a drone company, and they were kind of wondering why the stock has been underperforming. And I had to do a double take because actually in the last month or so, the stock isn't really underperforming. In fact, it's been up quite a bit. But when I'm looking at the overall market, there's a story here, Bridget, and we've talked about it with a lot of these drone stocks. ONDS isn't profitable yet. They generate very little revenue right now, and they don't have a lot of cash on their balance sheet. And that means that there's a concern about dilution of the stock, and that's going to hang on this stock for a while. It doesn't mean that the stock can't make it to be something better than what it is, because right now it's trading in that penny stock range at about $2.26 a share. But that's what you're going to get with a lot of these stocks right now. These are companies that are not profitable yet, and like I said, in the case of ONDS, the companies, in order to generate the revenue they need to get across that finish line, they're going to have to probably do share offerings, which is going to dilute the stock, and that's just not something that investors want to see right now.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that similar movement in a lot of these drone stocks, like you said. I want to pull up RCAT as one of the companies that people have mentioned in the chat a few times. It's one of those drone stocks that did similar to what Dragonfly did on Friday, which is where it basically doubled overnight on Thursday, and then Friday, end of the day, down a little bit. Do you know why we saw that pullback, and then kind of what those stocks are doing right now?
I'm going to look at the chart right now, Bridget. This is another one. We've talked about this one, I think, the last couple of Market Beat Mondays. So we just got done talking about ONDS, and the situation with RCAT's a little bit better in the sense that they are another company that relies on these equity offerings. However, RCAT just got through one of those recently, and so that's contributed to a little bit more bullish sentiment in the company, because now investors can go into it without necessarily thinking, okay, they're going to have an equity offering coming up, because they've already had one in the past. Now, let me see. Over the last 5 days, stock overall is down 16%. So that's a pretty deep drop. Was there an earnings story? I'm looking it up, Bridget.
Yeah, there's a lot to look up here. And like you said, it was a big jump and then a big drop. And a lot of those smaller drone companies kind of have similar looking charts, a lot like Red Cat right now.
Let's see here. So why? Yeah, because you're right. It was really, really up there on Friday. It was surging. I think a lot of the drone stocks were.
Right. Didn't we just get a pledge from the White House to really boost drone spending and make America the drone leader, the drone powerhouse? That's boosting the whole complex, I think.
Okay, so Bridget, this is one of those that I'm just going to kind of say, I can't say this for sure, but just looking at headlines I'm looking at, it's kind of one of those that makes me want to shake my head a little bit. So it looks like Red Cat's been named as part of a class action lawsuit, and that's probably dragging shares down a little bit as some investors are heading for the exits. Don't know how serious that is right now. I'd have to dig into that story a little bit more to see if there's anything there to it. But this kind of goes to that level of when people hear about insider selling, a lot of times they panic sell, and a lot of times there's not much to the story. We see these stories sometimes, and sometimes there is some substance there, and a lot of times it's just some shareholders that were disgruntled. But I don't know what the full details are, but I am seeing in headlines that the company's been named in that, and that's the only really reason that I can see right now that the stock would have taken that sharp of a dip. I mean, it's down 16% today, and that's unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking in kind of a similar sector, we've got those small drone companies, we've got eVTOLs, and then we also just have these more space, aerospace stocks that all seem to be getting a lot of interest right now. A lot of investors are looking into many of these stocks. So Thomas, I gave you that ASTS that one of our viewers wanted to see, and that one is also seeing a similar big jump right now. I'm going to pull up the stock chart right now.
Oh yeah, this stock is up almost 200% in 2 months. AST Space Mobile, we talked about this one before. It's a great looking company. So this is space-based mobile services, communication services. It's a competitor for not SpaceX. Chris, what's the name of Elon Musk?
SpaceX,
not the SpaceX, the satellites.
Oh gosh,
Starlink.
Hit my tongue. Anyway,
thank you, Starlink. Yeah.
But a competition for that. They've been building momentum with commercial and government contracts. Their network is coming online. They're starting to really produce revenue, and they're entering a hyper growth phase where they're going to be growing by triple digits for quarter after quarter and year after year for a couple of years. At the same time, they're securing new financing, they're repositioning their old debt, improving their balance sheet, really setting themselves up for some profitable growth. Now, on top of all of this, the last report of short interest was very high at 18%. So I imagine there's some short covering in this one. But the takeaway is that with the short interest involved, there could be some volatility, which means we might see a nice sharp pullback and a good buying opportunity. But the long-term opportunity is for this stock to continue to rise based on the revenue and earnings outlook. So pray for the volatility, pray for the pullback. When it does happen, buy some of this stock and hold on to it for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, speaking of pullbacks and volatility, that's going to lead me to our next one. And this is a common name we talk about quite often. That's Archer Aviation, one of the leaders in the eVTOL race.
Yeah.
Archer had a pullback. And I think one of the questions in the chat is whether now is a good time to get in. So Chris, any of your thoughts on Archer? Is this pullback right now a good time to get into this stock?
Well, once again, Bridget, I'm going to have to figure out what it was that caused the stock to pull back, because this stock rallied really hard on Friday.
Right.
And it was up sharply, but yeah, today, let me see. Today the stock's down over 10%. So okay, so once again, it looks like there's some concern here about let's see. There's some concern that the company's the worth was overstated when they went public as a SPAC company. I'm not. So again, I don't really know about that. What I would say here is, Bridget, is Archer a buy at this level? I think so. And the reason why is because that Archer along with Joby are right now the biggest two names in this space. It's the question isn't really going to be which company gets across the finish line first as far as FAA certification. It looks like both are going to do that. Joby may get across first, Archer may be second. That doesn't really matter. The story is going to really be about the growth. Archer's taking a little bit of a different path to growth than Joby is, but it looks Archer's got partnerships already in place. They're probably going to be doing commercial flights in the Middle East later this year. I would think that if you're getting a 10% pullback like you're getting with Archer right now, this is probably a good level to be looking at it at. If I'm looking here, where it was trading heading into today was a level of resistance, and it's bouncing off that level of resistance. So anything you're seeing pull back from around that $14 level, to me, that's a buying signal that it wants to move higher. And I think this is a stock, but again, I agree with Thomas. This is a stock that I think if you're going to buy it, you have to buy it with some conviction and with the idea that you want to hold it for a little while, because the real payoff here might not happen still for a year or more. But at this level, as around a $10 stock, yeah, I like Archer in this point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good conversation. I wanted to just put in a plug here. I see Z and Lilu, you're sharing about Blade Air Mobility. There's a lot of interest in all of the different players in eVTOL stocks. I have a special video coming out on Thursday, really talking about Joby versus Archer, breaking down what's different between these companies. And then we have a list of some other eVTOL names to look at. So if you're not a subscriber to the channel yet, hit subscribe. Make sure to follow. We have a new video post every day, Tuesday through Friday, and then again on Sunday, and then our lives on Monday. We have lots of topics that we cover, and I've got a special coming out on eVTOLs on Thursday this week. So hit subscribe. You can watch that one, and really we'll dive into it more. In those individual videos, we have a better chance to dive in. In this Market Beat Monday, we're just kind of covering all of these different sectors for a brief look, which is also really fun to do. Mohawk wants to hear about Rocket Lab, and that'll kind of wrap up our aerospace discussion for now. Let's talk about Rocket Lab. This is one we've talked about on the channel a few times before. Thomas, your thoughts on this company?
Well, right. I haven't looked at them for a while. I just saw the chart for the first time in probably at least a couple of months. and certainly surprised by what looks to be like a 200% rise from last year, 10 to 50, yeah, like 400% rise. So certainly something here is happening well. I think the story is that they've been gaining some traction with revenue. Let me confirm this. Yeah, they've been gaining some traction with revenue growth. They're growing at a hyper pace, was triple digit in the last year, slow to the high double digits this year, still looking at solid pace. This year to next year should also be another solid year with probably about 35, 45% growth. So yeah, another company with traction gaining, developing their technology, getting a nice some deal volume growing, some revenue building, and that's all being seen in the price action. I'm sure if we were to go look at MarketBeat here and check out the analyst activity, I bet you we find analysts raising targets. And let's see. Right now, consensus is calling for a 30% downside, but the trend is up.
Yeah,
Right,
BofA and
increasing.
Citigroup just upgraded a little.
Increasing coverage, firming sentiment, price target increases leading to the 50 range. So right now the market looks like it's probably fairly valued based on the sentiment trend, but the sentiment trend is very bullish. And so if we get some more positive news, that trend should continue. In the charts, what I'm seeing also is increasing trading volume. So all of these things are pointing to a bullish market. So provided we get good results, this stock should continue to rise.
Well, very good. Well, let's move on out of this sector a little bit. I know we've covered drones and eVTOLs and all these different kind of aerospace companies, but now we're going to go into some other interesting ones that are seeing a lot of moves right now. Open is one that was mentioned in the chat and we talked about before we got started today. You can't ignore the big run up that Open has had this week. Let's talk about that one, Chris.
Yeah, so Open Door, actually the trading was paused about an hour before the market closed because of a limit up, limit down, and the Open stock just shot higher today. So there's news that at least one analyst is very bullish about it. He put out a bullish thesis on the company. So this is for investors who might not be familiar about the company. This is a digital real estate company, and they focus in on this iBuying segment. So if you want to think about them, it's similar to how Carvana approaches the car market. Open Door approaches the housing market with the idea of they will buy a home directly from the seller. They fix it up a little bit. They flip it back onto the market. That didn't go so well when interest rates started working against them. This analyst is getting a little bit more bullish as there is a possibility that interest rates are going to be moving lower, but also because Open Door's changing their business model so that they're not going to be competing directly with real estate agents and they're going to be working cooperatively with them. Also, Zillow and Redfin, who are competitors of Open Door, or at least they were competitors, are exiting the iBuying part of the business. So it kind of leaves Open Door as the only player there. That might be why it's going up. But again, there's short interest here. There's a lot of short covering. And some people just believe that right now, Open Door could be having a GameStop moment. That remains to be seen. Approach it with caution if you're going to be approaching this one right now.
Yeah, some people calling this maybe a potential meme stock. Thomas,
right.
Your thoughts, I don't know, Chris or Thomas, whoever wants to follow up on, whenever you see a stock move this month or this much that you see trading paused, is it entering that meme stock territory, and what should investors keep in mind?
Well, I don't know that the trading up pause indicates a meme stock, but the poor business fundamentals, the high short interest, and the sharp rise on one single headline certainly plays into the meme stock scenario.
Right.
So right now, what I would want to see is for this market to experience its turbulence is where we're going, because what we're seeing is turbulence. We had some news, a catalyzing event. Shorts are covering. We want to see if they continue to cover. Do they reposition? Do they drive the stock price back down to retest support? Is support retested at a higher or lower level? And how does the news cycle unfold? So like Chris was saying, this is one to be careful of. We've certainly seen a signal that this is one to be watched, but I wouldn't call it a buy signal just yet.
Very good. Okay, we've got a couple of other interesting sectors to cover here. I'm going to have you, Chris, look up Duolingo. I believe that's DUOL. That's something a couple of people have asked about here today. And then a name that we're familiar with, it looks like some more a semiconductor name. It's come up on the channel before. I'm actually going to bring the chart up now. Thomas, if you remember talking about this, it's NVTS. Navitas Semiconductor. It had such a huge run up earlier in June where it just shot up from the $2 range to that $6 range, and now it's up to almost $9 now. What can you tell us about this company?
Let me touch base with it again real fast, but if I remember correctly, they're domestic based. Yeah, developed and markets power semiconductors in the United States. Company was founded based in Torrance, California. Right. So this is a domestic onshoring semiconductor play. They're making specialty and niche semiconductors, but we certainly have companies turning towards domestic production, domestic sourcing for their semiconductors. So they're well positioned for that. I see here that Deutsche Bank has recently downgraded them on valuation. So we're going to want to see some follow through in the action and the results, proving that the stock is performing the way that we think that it might. I think today it rose 25%. I'm not seeing what the news was for that. Focus on Navitas.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting when we see a stock like this that's seen multiple major jumps and it gets way above where analysts are forecasting. Whether this is a good buy for investors, is it going to keep jumping up? I think that's an important thing to look at.
So I just noticed that this stock has got short interest near 30%. So I will say that I think that it's a good play for domestic onshoring of semiconductors, but that play is not being seen yet in the results. What we're seeing in the stock price right now is potentially a meme quality rally and short covering driven by hope. So again, we're going to want to see this volatility play out, see what happens with the market action. Do the shorts reposition at a higher level? Do they drive the market lower? Are we able to get above critical resistance, which to me right now looks to be about $10? So yeah, Navitas, one to watch, one to be wary of.
I think that's a good way to look at it too. We've got so many different names coming in. I'm not sure how many more we can fit in our last little 10 minutes here. Let's just talk about one of the names that came in was DLX, Deluxe stock chart. I'm going to pull that one up of just kind of looking at what this company is. The stock chart's on a little bit of a downtrend right now. This one is a provider of integrated solutions that help small businesses, financial institutions, and consumers thrive in a digital economy. So it looks like a financial fintech company potentially here. Again, the chart action on that one's a little bit different. Have either of you covered DLX yet?
I haven't. My first look at the chart, it might be at a bottom, but we're also testing critical support, and it's possible that we'll see a new low. Let's see what the result data looks like. Another stock with high short interest. You guys have picked a lot of short squeeze candidates today. It's like the drone / short episode.
Yep.
This looks like it is struggling. It is in contraction, not making money. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong chart. Never mind. Hang on a second. You always got to watch out for that. That's the right one. Well, still struggling. It's been in contraction, just returned to growth, but it was real tepid. Making money. Looks like there's some margin pressure. So not a horrible stock, but
Thomas, I'm looking at the consensus price target right now, and it's got a 41% upside based on what the analysts are saying. So that's something, but there's only 2 analyst ratings, so not much.
Right. You will see, right. So there you see the upside, but there's not very much conviction in it with just 2 analysts covering it. We'd want to see, 10 to 20 analysts covering to get a really good firm conviction in what they're telling us.
Sticking to this sector a little bit more, a couple people have asked about Webull. If you're a retail investor, we know you've heard of this company before. The stock chart is, there's not much happening there. I'm going to pull that one up right now. Everybody knows what this company does. It hasn't done a whole lot year to date. Any thoughts for you guys to share? It looks like there's maybe a little bit more volume happening recently.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what stock it was.
Bull, Bull, Webull.
Yeah, I haven't really covered it before, Bridget, but my suspicion here would be that there's a lot of investors who are hoping that Webull's going to be another Robinhood and it's going to catch on in the same way. And right now there's some enthusiasm about it because of the crypto and the fact that you might be able to, buy and sell crypto on the platform.
Yeah.
So
it's only been trading for about 3 months and the chart looks pretty sketchy. It looks like there could be a bottom around $11, seeing some support the last couple of weeks at $11, but there's a lot of overhang too. That second week of trading caused a really wicked looking doji candle with a big long upper shadow. So there's a lot of people that bought in that week and are losers who are going to potentially want to get out of this market when the stock price gets back up to that level. So, there might be a 15, you might get a $15 to $30 increase, but I would be skeptical about a rise above $30.
Yeah, the 52-week range on that one is very interesting for Webull. Like you said, there's people who've lost some on that if you got in at the real high on that stock. Another one that's come up a couple of times in the chat, I want to get to it, is ELF. Chris, I know we've talked about this one before. I'm pulling up the chart here right now. ELF has had a little bit of a run up since April. It went back down again and now trading around that 115, 111 range. 5-day performance is up. 3-month performance is up quite a bit. Thoughts on this company?
Yeah, this has been a solid company coming in. They're obviously playing that trend of sort of as a defensive stock. This is something that people are going to continue to pay for, even depending on how the market goes. As I seem to remember, there was some tariff concerns regarding ELF, and the reason why it's been charging up higher in the last 3 months is because some of those have been resolved. Obviously, you're going to be looking at this company. It reports earnings on August 6th. I think a lot of investors are going to want to pay attention to that to kind of confirm the momentum. But right now this seems like a pretty. It's been it's down about 7% in the last month, and that just seems like it was kind of a nice pullback. Gives investors probably a nice entry point, because unless they hear something that would disturb them in the earnings report, which I don't expect that they will. This looks like it could be a nice entry point.
Right. I generally like ELF. It's a good brand. They've been growing well. They've been expanding well. Like Chris said, they had some tariff headwinds, and that has impacted the stock price the last few quarters. This recent run up, I think, has a lot to do with the acquisition of Rode. Right, in some degree, there's a little bit of a meme quality to it. I mean, certainly Rode is a popular brand, but it should reinvigorate the growth and help the margins, which will help sustain the long-term story, possibly get the stock price back up to retesting its highs. So that's near 200. We're around 110 now, so that's almost a 50% upside.
Yeah, that's good news for that company for sure. And it's a retail company. We haven't been talking much about retail stocks here, so it's good to see kind of a different industry picking up some. I have a couple more stocks I want to get to. I want to give you guys some time to look at it. Thomas, I'm going to have you talk about some of the economic data that just came out that I know was on the positive side. Chris, while he's doing that, look up a stock called with the ticker symbol TER, Teradine, I think. This one might be interesting to look at. So, Chris, you can look at that one. Thomas, why don't you give us just a rundown real quick on some of the economic data that's recently came out and what that means for the market?
TER, Bridget?
Yep, TER.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. So last week's big data was the inflation data. So with the CPI, the PPI, and the import prices, what we got was an initial scare on Tuesday because the consumer price index was a little bit hot. But then that was followed up on Wednesday and Thursday, with cooler PPI and import price data. Took the sting out of it. So we're kind of in the same place we were as far as inflation went. It's still too hot. It's not scary hot. There was some upward pressure because of tariffs, but it wasn't, dangerous. It wasn't more than we expected. So right now the Fed is still in their sweet spot where they don't really have to cut rates. They can if they want to when they think it's time. They're not being forced to. Other good data last week was the manufacturing surveys. Both the Empire State and the Philly Fed manufacturing surveys were not only better than expected, they were significantly better than expected. Both were expansionary. So that's kind of telling me that companies are turning towards more domestic manufacturing, which is really a good news. It's one of the goals of the tariffs to help get some more manufacturing in America. We're never going to get it all to come back, but if we can boost what's here, that's great news. Other data that came out, the industrial production and the capacity utilization were both positive, aligned with the idea of improving manufacturing. Nothing scary in the Beige Book. The Beige Book, if you don't know, is the Fed's book of anecdotal stories from the different Fed regions that kind of give an idea of what's going on with labor and manufacturing, housing, the different economic drivers. Then I think the really good data last week was the jobless claims and the retail sales. The jobless claims fell more than expected, continue to trend in the very healthy range, show no signs of deterioration. So as of the first part of July, the U.S. economy, based on the labor market, was still very healthy and resilient. Also seen in the June retail sales, which were very strong at the headline, strong ex autos, accelerating from last year, shows the consumer is spending. We're a consumer driven economy. That's all very good news. Looking towards this week, there's not going to be very much data. There'll be quite a few Fed speakers. The big data, I think, this week will be the initial claims. Once again, we're looking for that to just affirm that the labor markets are still pretty healthy.
Very good. All right, Chris, we're going to move on. I've got 3 more names I want to get through yet today. This is one of them. Let's look at TER stock ticker.
Yeah. So real quick here, Bridget. So what investors should understand here, this is a company, they do automated test systems for semiconductors. It's a duopoly company. So their biggest competitor is a company out of Japan called Adventist. Teradyne has contracts with NVIDIA. They also have contracts, I believe, with TSM, and I didn't see. I think maybe Samsung is another one. So lots of potential with this stock. Looks like it kind of bottomed out a little bit in April, along with a lot of the chip stocks. That was the concern over the tariffs. It's starting to make a comeback now. As far as the chart itself, the stock doesn't look tremendously overvalued. It doesn't look tremendously undervalued. I think it's trading in a fair range right now. So I think it's one of those that it reports earnings, I believe, in a couple of weeks, and it's one certainly that investors may want to get involved with.
Yeah, that's an interesting stock chart, an interesting company to bring up. Thanks for that one. I wanted to cover another one we talked about on MarketBeat Mondays. We've talked about on the channel before, and this is AMPX. I'm going to pull up that screen right now. Imperius Technologies, it's that battery company. I can't remember, Chris or Thomas, which one of you talked about it before, but I know we've covered it on MarketBeat Mondays. It continues to just trend up. The stock is doing really, really well.
Well, right. This is just a continuation of the story that we've been talking about the last few Mondays and over the last couple of months with this stock. They've got the next gen batteries based on the silicone anodes. They've boosted their production capacity. They're boosting sales. They've got a very positive deal volume. They're building momentum. They've got a robust backlog. We're on the verge of hyper growth, triple digit growth for quarters, if not years. The potential for disrupting the entire battery industry. And it's being seen in the stock price, obviously, and in the analyst activity. Last week, we got a couple of different upgrades and price target increases that are really supporting this stock from beneath and also leading it higher. as I mentioned with that chart previously, there's also a very good amount of volume coinciding, converging with these highs. So as this stock has been moving up off of its lows and then accelerating, the volume has been moving up off of its lows and also accelerating, which shows that the market is getting stronger and stronger on a week-to-week basis and really has nowhere else to go but up.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting company. I almost forgot about that one because it's just done so well. And so it has a lot of room yet to run. It'll be great to see how often this keeps coming up on Market Beat Mondays. I'm going to wrap up the conversation this time. Thomas kind of already gave us a look at some things to look ahead to this week. We know we've talked about earnings to watch this week. There's going to be some big ones coming out, a couple of Mag 7s this week. We'll stay on top of all of those with our videos coming up. But another thing I wanted to talk about is a couple of biotech companies. Their names we've talked, one is a name we've talked about before, but I want to talk about a new screener we have on MarketBeat that really helps with these with these biotech companies. Chris, I know you and I talked about this. So the two companies that we had come up in the chat today that are in biotech, the first one is Viking Therapeutics, VKTX. Again, this one came up earlier because it had been doing so well, and now it's trending down a little bit. But I've got the chart pulled up. If you guys want to pull that up, Chris or Thomas, whoever wants to take that one, I'm just going to show this new tab we have here called FDA Events. If you like biotechs, if this is your thing, this is such a great tool because it shows, it really tracks all of the times when there are new regulatory announcements from the FDA. So you can find out the latest approval and maybe upcoming ones too. There's usually even a timeline of things to watch. It shows you a timeline of when they started the clinical trial, what the results were, and all of those timelines really coincide with what's happening with that chart. Either one of you who wants to take a quick look at Viking Therapeutics?
Oh, I can take a look at it, Bridget.
Well, yeah, just a quick look at the chart. It appears to have hit a bottom and it looks like it's ready to reverse into a rally, but it's just going to depend on what the upcoming results say.
Yeah.
And I think
I always have to refresh my memory on Viking. So they're the ones that they're trying to do. That's right. They're the ones that are trying to do the oral GLP-1 drug. So they're kind of skipping the injectable. They're going right to the oral drug. So obviously they're trying to get in on that market. Let's see. They recently announced that they're going into late stage clinical testing after positive phase 2. So basically the market's going to be waiting to see what happens with that phase 3 result later this year. But certainly that's one that would put Viking on your watch list because, and possibly if you really believe that it's going to happen, this is the time to buy it because it's down about 20% for the year, 37% last year. So if it can get that across the finish line and possibly get there in advance of Lilly or Novo Nordisk, then that would be huge for the company.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up the full screen here, the consensus price target too. They're showing about 172% upside. The consensus price target is 87 on this one, the high end at 138. So that would be even more of an upside. It does seem to be down quite a bit right now, like you said, Chris. So it seems like a good potential buying opportunity one.
Well, yeah, it's going to come down. I'm sorry to interrupt. It comes down to how the results come out. I noticed again, 25% short interest. I'm looking at this chart, and after it sold off, hit a bottom, it's been moving sideways, kind of in alignment with the cluster of moving averages. Looks like it's ready to make a giant move in either direction. This is a candidate for an options play, maybe a straddle or a strangle where you're going to play both sides and, you know, looking for such a large move that it doesn't matter if one half of it loses because the other half is going to make such a large amount of profit.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we're over time already today. I did want to bring up one more that I had the chart up already. This is ATNF. This is another small biotech company that's seen a lot of volatility. It looks like in the last 5 days, it's been up 219% in 5 days. So quite a run up in just the last week. Again, we've got that FDA events tab here that kind of tells you what is happening with the big announcements with this company that might be helping to move that stock price too. So that's a really good tool to look out for if you go on MarketBeat. It's totally free just to look it up and use that FDA events tab.
Right.
Either of you seen this company to take a look at the market moves? Again, it's a really tiny company.
I haven't seen too much about it, but the one thing that I do see is that a lot of its research is based on cannabis-based therapies, and so with cannabis in Congress right now, they're trying to pass laws right now. It's probably why the stock is getting lifted.
Yeah, interesting look. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We've covered a lot. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to talk about, Chris or Thomas, of things that our viewers should be paying attention to this week that could be big market movers?
I don't know if it'll move the markets, but certainly, Tesla reports on Wednesday night, and that's always a show. So it might not affect the market, but it'll affect Tesla shareholders.
Right. It'll be interesting for some market action.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, that's always a show is a good way to put it. I love it, guys. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. Thank you, everyone who tuned in to join us live. And thank you to those who are watching this on the replay. Join us for MarketBeat Mondays all the time. And stick with our channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet so that you can get our latest posts. We post every day. And we cover a lot of these big market movers in our videos throughout the week, too. We're so glad you're here with us. Thanks for joining the MarketBeat community. And as always, happy investing.